Welcome to the Focused Fundraiser. This is where we discuss how to focus on the right fundraising practices with fundraisers who are actually in the trenches and figuring these things out as they go. So because we believe that the enemy is doing more of focusing on the right things, we want to open up a space for fundraisers to talk about how they're focusing on the right things and not trying to do more, but do the right things. Today, I am joined by Chris Stibbs. Chris has been in the development space for many years, and you are currently the Director of Development at Growing Futures. Chris, welcome to the conversation.
No, thanks so much for having me, Rob. I'm looking forward to being here.
All right, this is your moment to brag a little bit. Start us off by sharing a bit about yourself and the path that led you into the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, so I'm a Omaha, Nebraska native who found himself in Kansas City, Missouri, when I went to college down here. And I thought I wanted to be many things in college. Everything from being Olivia Benson from Law and Order SVU to being a therapist to being a teacher. And somehow I stumbled my way into the nonprofit sector and fell in love with fundraising of all things to love and really just had a passion for that, and that kind of spearheaded my career path.
Tell me a bit about your career path, because I know you've been nominated for certain things. You really are a community builder. What's that been like? What's been your path and trajectory through some nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, so in college, I found my love for the social services space. I began volunteering with a domestic violence shelter in town called Newhouse, which is where I really found my love for fundraising. And so when I graduated college, I went to work for a national service club organization called Sertoma, very similar to Rotary clubs. They're all over the country. Headquarters happened to be here in Kansas City, but realized that I needed to get back into my passion of social services, housing, working with women and children, which led me to another domestic violence shelter in rural Missouri called Hope Haven of Cass County. But my heart was always with Newhouse. I knew that someday I'd come back and return, and so went back to Newhouse in 2019, and I spent the last 6 years there as the chief development officer, working my way up, and had a really great opportunity to come join a Head Start early education nonprofit in one of the metro areas of Kansas City called Growing Futures, where I am now. And I've been here for the last 6 months and absolutely loving it. And it's been a fun career journey in fundraising.
Awesome. Well, you have a plethora of experience to pull from here in this conversation. I'm excited. It's the new year. So many nonprofits begin January in reactive mode. To you, Chris, what does healthy beginning of a new year look like for development?
Yeah. I One of the things that I always try to emphasize, which, I'm trying to practice what I preach, is taking little bites at the beginning of the year. We know about the resolution trend that we as humans have, where we're going to just magically do a million different things, like go to the gym 6 times a week when we only went 6 times last year. And so I think the same thing kind of applies in the nonprofit sector. What are little things we can start out doing in the new year to build that momentum versus I'm going to take a huge bite out of this and completely redo our plans for development, because those are often not achievable and we burn ourselves out quickly because it's daunting and feels like too much. So I'm a big proponent of how can we take it slow but be effective and build on that. And one of the other areas that me and some of my fundraising friends talk about is, this is a new year, so it's a new opportunity to get out from behind your desk. If you're a development person who's raising money, and especially when it comes to major gifts or individual donors, if you're spending your 9 to 5 behind your desk, there's a good chance that you are not raising the funds you need. We need to get out from behind our desks and get out there and meet with donors.
Yeah, that stewardship piece of in person is so powerful. And after this, the year end appeals are happening where can feel a lot more transactional. How do you see like the shift in your conversations with donors going into the new year from more of the transactional end of year, let's get the transactions done, to stewardship and relationship building? Do you see a difference, or is it a continuation?
Yeah, I feel like in some ways it's a continuation, but January is just as important as December because those donors are now looking and thinking, okay, how am I going to be stewarded? How am I going to be thanked? Or am I just going to hear 6 months later or a year later, hey, we need that donation again? So January should be building on the momentum of your end of year giving. We should be doing more touch points with calling our donors, sending them handwritten thank you notes. We love sending artwork from the kiddos or recording a video from one of our staff members thanking a donor. Really, January is that time to continue moving forward so that hopefully you can achieve that second gift or that next gift from the donor, but make it very transformational, not transactional.
Yeah. You touched a little bit on trends. I'm curious to know, going into this new year, do you feel like there are trends in the fundraising space that aren't really working anymore? You see people still using them, and are there trends that you see coming up that could be effective to replace these old, outdated trends?
Yeah, I think we are trying to do too much blanket. Like, if we just send our newsletter out to all of our donors, that'll be good. Or if we just send our direct mail to all of our donors, that'll be good. And we tend to go with these blanket options, which I think can very much be sprinkled into your development plan of how you steward, cultivate, solicit your donors. But we need to add more intentionality to it, recognizing that, a donor who may give $25,000 to your organization, just giving them that blanket email every month that you give to all of your donors isn't necessarily going to move the needle forward. How are we creating that intentionality with our donors? How are we making them feel special, and connected to our mission? And feeling like their investment is truly making an impact. And that comes down to, really being intentional about how we put that in front of them.
Yeah, what you're touching on is segmenting them into different donor journeys, if you
Yeah,
will. That's what we use.
exactly.
That's the term we use at Donor Doc, is donor journeys. How do you like, what is your guys' approach to that currently? How do you do that?
Yeah. So we are kind of in the very early stages as we've just moved to a new CRM, hint, hint, donor doc, and really starting to segment out. Here is what the experience is like for someone who's giving $100 or more. Here's the experience for someone that is giving less than $100. And it doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. It's just different on how we're creating those touch points. And as we start to segment even more, we are looking at our major donors and being like, okay, we want a specific video for this level and above that is from one of our staff members that is using the donor's name in the video and thanking them specifically for what they gave their money towards, and we're adding that into the donor journey for them. So it's really a mixture of the automation of, like, this is the standard email that'll go out at, 30 days out or 60 days out, with also, this donor's getting a handwritten thank you note 6 months out from their donation, reminding them of how much we appreciate their gift. So it's fun being able to create these different journeys that not only help make, our lives as fundraisers a little bit easier when, we're trying to communicate with hundreds and for some agencies thousands or tens of thousands of donors. But also it's creating opportunity for to sprinkle in those very personal touch points, like a phone call, with
Right.
the donor.
Yeah,
And
I think that's powerful. I think you touched on something really important too, is I think most of us understand segmentation, but it can sometimes feel like you're segmenting them into major donors. So we're going to spend all of our time on that because they're the most important. It's not about who's most important. It's about the different journeys. A new donor, you want to nurture them and build relationship with them, versus a long-term donor or a major donor. They probably have a different relationship with you. So they shouldn't get the same email that a new donor gets. So I think that's
exactly.
super powerful to be able to do that and automate it, right? So that it
Yeah.
takes off your plate.
Well, and how many stories have we heard where a donor started out with a $25 gift that turned into a $2.5 million gift, years later, and they were just saying, how is this nonprofit going to stay in touch with me? Because, not everybody wants to go write a $2.5 million check on their first gift to a new organization. If they do, please reach out to me at Growing Futures. So it's really about stewarding that relationship, which just goes to prove that whether it's a $25 gift or a $25,000 gift, these gifts are important. And we need to figure out the timing and the effort that we put into it. Yes, a $25,000 gift might get a little bit more attention than a $25 gift, but it doesn't mean that we can just cast the $25 donor aside.
Yeah. And I think an emerging topic more and more that I'm seeing is the mid-level donors.
Hmm.
Uh, Been a little bit of the middle child in relationships where they get ignored a little bit, and they're getting more attention now of realizing that these are the sustainers, the people that are giving consistently, and maybe it's only $100 a month, but they've been doing it for 5 years.
Exactly. And oftentimes they have some capacity to go up, even if that's, hey, I'm going from $500 to $1,500. I mean, that's $1,000 additionally a year that you're getting. And so, yeah, mid-level donors often get forgotten. It's like, here are our first-time donors, and then here are our major donors. And then it's like, okay, this person has been consistent for 10 years. And so, yeah, there's a lot of work that we have to put into the different levels.
Yeah. So, you manage a fundraising team yourself and one or two other people, I believe. Um, how do you guys set fundraising goals for the year without that feel ambitious, that feel realistic, but making sure that you don't burn out your team by springtime? How do you guys go about it?
Yeah. So we have an interesting calendar. So we are July to June, so more like a school year calendar. So we are mid-year right now for us, but January is still just as important. So I started one day before the new fiscal year, so June 30th. And so stepping in, our team came together within my first few weeks of starting and hosted a development retreat. And from there, we built out KPIs for each of the team members, including myself. And I had told them, we are going to start out by building these KPIs. And then 6 months down the road, I want to analyze it and meet again. So this month we're hosting it again and adjust from there. We have to constantly be evaluating our KPIs to make sure that they make sense. Because you're right, if we give someone an astronomical goal that they'll never achieve, that is a quick way to burn out and for them to lose motivation because it's like, if I know I can't achieve this, then like, why am I even trying? Which leads to people, not wanting to do their job or looking for another organization. So we are actually going to be analyzing our KPIs this month to tailor them. What is working? What needs to change? What could potentially be increased or decreased depending on how we're hitting it? Um, and also every month we're looking at our KPIs. So we fundraisers and nonprofits sometimes get into this routine of we build the development plan and then it sits on the shelf. We never look at it again until next year comes around and we decide, oh, we should probably build a new development plan. Constantly looking at this document is really important so that we know we're staying on track.
That leads into another question I have for you around metrics. So you guys are doing these KPIs this month, so it's probably pretty relevant of what are the metrics, and I'm not saying like what are the 20 metrics you got. What are the
Yeah.
four, like one, two, three metrics that you guys or you are watching closely as you're halfway through the year? But yeah, what are those metrics?
Yeah. So one of the metrics that we are really starting to emphasize, and we learned this in our development retreat from the consultant we hired, is donor retention for rates for donors who are giving $100 or more. So we often just look at the overall donor retention rate and it's like, okay, we want to retain 30% or 40% or just above the national average. But we know that through peer-to-peer campaigns and Facebook fundraisers, you get the people who donate where they probably are truly just donating because it was Rob's birthday and they wanted to, make a donation instead of get you a gift. We're going to do everything we can to try and keep them, but sometimes that's just, they're a one and done. Versus how do we look at, $100 or more, or $250 or more, or $1,000 or more, depending on the size of the agency, and look at that retention rate where
Mhm.
they've given a little bit more of an investment, maybe something that is more meaningful to them, and retaining those donors, and looking at that rate, because those are, once you get into the mid-level to major, those are really critical to retain. And so we are kind of shifting how we look at our retention rate. One of the other KPIs that we're really focused on is, sometimes it's like, okay, we want to write 100 grants for the year. Well, that's great and fine and dandy, but if you're getting one of those, like, writing 100 grants doesn't really mean anything if you're not getting approved. And so we are really trying to track how many grants are approved and also how many new grants are approved. Because one of our areas of growth really is in our grant management. And so paying closer attention to those approval rates for both new grants and recurring, has kind of been at top of mind for us. And I'd say those are two of our big KPIs, and growing monthly giving.
Yeah, those are fantastic KPIs. I love the idea of segmenting down or filtering down your retention rates because of you're right. You have those outliers that can drive down any type of metric, and so filtering it to the core pieces is huge. I'm curious to know on the grant side of things, are you guys tracking what's working so that you don't have to have this huge number of grants and you can say, hey, we approved these and this type of grant we get approved more often, so we're going to go after those instead of everything? Is it a focus piece?
It is. I'd say we're pretty new to it. As we've been growing, we have been implementing a new platform that is specifically for grant prospecting and grant research and tracking. And so we've been identifying funders that, kind of align with us, because it gives us the ability to see what other organizations who are similar to us are being given to. We have really been looking at, how do we build out kind of our core, this is what we do, the case for support. How do we, focus on these types of family foundations? So we're learning every day about what's kind of working and what's not working. But again, always trying to revisit that and make sure that, we're staying on track with what is actually going to move our agency forward. So I'd say to answer your question, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, we all are, aren't we?
right. There's always something. So
Another topic or another question I wanted to ask you about, Chris, is what I'm going to term hard conversations. So, what's a conversation that you think fundraisers avoid having at the beginning of their fiscal year that would actually make the rest of the year easier? I'm thinking things like asking your board to actually help fundraise, things like that.
yeah, I think it kind of plays into what we were talking a little bit about earlier. Is at the beginning of the year, like, we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and we're excited for a new year as long as we've gotten enough rest over the holiday break. And we're just trying to bite off more than we can chew. Or we're starting fresh and we are focusing on things that aren't moving the needle forward, or we're not kind of jumping in and starting to have those conversations with donors. We're kind of tiptoeing around it. We're cleaning up the office. We are, maybe playing around with some of the marketing, or, I'm all for, like, donor CRM cleanup is very, very important. But, like, maybe we're doing some stuff in our database that, is not a priority, versus just going out and hitting the ground running with meeting with our donors. I agree with the board comment too. Like, we need to be meeting with our board members at the beginning of our year and saying, okay, this is kind of what the vision is for this year. Here are the ways that we want you to be engaged. I sit on a board for a homeless shelter called Restart here in Kansas City, and we just had our January board meeting, and it's our new fiscal year. And our chief development officer came in with a list of everything that's going on for the year. We upped our commitments. We checked what events we were looking at attending. We went over contacts we can make introductions on. And I thought that was brilliant. I was like, we are getting started fresh and early, and that's how it should be. And I think just in the new year, focusing on our priorities. What are our priorities? What is going to move the organization forward, help us raise the money we need so that we can serve the individuals who need us?
Mm. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. I always end with what I call a tactical takeaway, something very practical. So, Chris, what is one thing that every fundraiser should do today that you believe matters most?
Yeah. I would say reach out to a donor. I want you to commit to either calling or sending an email update and not just like a blanket, like "Meh," email. Like send a nice email telling this donor, like, this is what your gift last month truly did, and maybe attach a photo to it. But I would love for every person who's watching this right now to reach out to a donor today.
So good. I appreciate all of the insight and wisdom that you shared freely, Chris. You have a wealth of it. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with fellow fundraisers.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Yeah, you bet. And for those listening, if you are curious about how DonorDoc can help you find that clarity, build a strong donor base through smart stewardship, visit us at donordoc.com. We will see you next week.